You can take your Bibles and go to Genesis 43. Genesis chapter 43. Where we left off in the story of Joseph was after having gone to Egypt, Joseph's brothers have met with him, and they don't know that this is Joseph. He knows it's them. They left there with bags full of grain, but Joseph also kept one of them, Simeon, as he sent the others back, telling them that before they returned again, they would have to bring the youngest brother, Benjamin, who they had not brought. And when his brothers went back home and told this to Jacob, their father, he was not willing initially to risk Benjamin's life, sending him, and said that, I'm not doing this. You guys aren't going to go back. But the famine keeps going on long enough that they run out of food, and now they face that situation of either they starve to death or they're going to have to return. And Jacob says, we have no choice. You know, whatever comes, comes. I'm going to send you guys back. And that's exactly where we left off in Genesis 43, and we're going to pick this up in verse 15. And the men took that present, he told them to take twice as much money as they had, because when they came back from Egypt, the money they had taken to pay for the grain was placed back in their bags by Joseph. He did this without anybody knowing it. He put the money back in their bags so they didn't have to spend the money. So they're taking that money back, plus more money, plus some other presents, so that they can kind of smooth everything over in case, somebody in Egypt, Joseph or others, think that they stole that money back from what they had paid, and they head back there to try to get more food, and they're now taking Benjamin with them. And they took double the money in their hand and Benjamin, and rose up and went down to Egypt and stood before Joseph. And when Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to the ruler of his house, don't you like that? Joseph, when he first got to Egypt, he worked his way up to be the ruler of Potiphar's house. Now, Joseph's got his own household of servants, and he's got enough of them that he's got somebody whose job is to be the overseer of everything else in his house. So Joseph says to this guy, the ruler, the overseer of his house, bring these men home and slay, not the men. He probably was entitled to do that considering everything they did to him, but he doesn't. He says, bring them home and kill the fatted calf. We're going to have a big feast here. And make ready, for these men shall dine with me at noon. I'm having them over for lunch. Get everything ready. And the man did as Joseph bade, and the man brought the men into Joseph's house. And the men, his brothers, were afraid because they were brought into Joseph's house. Rather than being excited about this and feeling honored, they're scared. They're nervous. And they said, because of the money that was returned in our sacks at the first time are we brought in, that he may seek occasion against us and fall upon us and take us for bondmen and our asses. So we're going to be slaves and we're going to lose our asses in this whole thing here, because somehow they think that that money that we paid, we stole back. And this is why he's having us in the house. He's doing this because we're going to just be, maybe his slaves there in the house. Ironic, isn't it, that they would be concerned about being made slaves in a house in Egypt, considering that the man whose house they're in, their very own brother, they sold into slavery, and that's where he was. This is what they did to him. And Joseph's doing all of these things that, starting with what he did the last time they came, and more stuff's going to happen Where Joseph, it seems like he's just messing with them. It seems like he's just messing with them, but I don't believe that's the case in any way. What does it take to really affect a change in heart in somebody? I think that's what we see here as we look at the record. And consider that Joseph, in everything that we've seen him do, in everything that he has done this walking with God. When he was in Potiphar's house, the reason why he was put into that position of great responsibility was because Potiphar saw that God was working with him. And everything that he did, God blessed. When he was in prison, we saw that God blessed everything that he did. And Joseph was in close harmony with God, walking with God in every situation. And because of that, when the men had the dreams, he was able to interpret them. And that led to his interpreting Joseph's dream and saving Egypt and now his family from that famine, all because of Joseph's walk with God. We have seen Joseph consistently walking with God, not doing things just of his own feelings or his own desires. If Joseph was being run by emotion, if he was basing decisions on the basis of emotion, then he'd be doing a lot more than just messing with these guys. He would be pressing them into slavery. He would be doing all the things that they fear because they fear these things, knowing that, that's what a guy might do in these kind of situations. We did such for much less, for really no provocation at all. Verse 19. And they came near to the steward of Joseph's house. They go to the guy who's that ruler, the steward of Joseph's house. And they communed with him at the door of the house. They said, can we talk to you in private here? We got to tell you something. And said, "Oh, sir, we came indeed down at the first time to buy food. And it came to pass, when we came to the inn, that we opened our sacks, and behold, every man's money was in the mouth of his sack, our money in full weight. And we have brought it again in our hand." We didn't steal that money back. Somehow when we found that money was there, we had no idea how it got there, and we've brought it back. Just in case the reason why we're here today has something to do with that, we just want to set the record straight before anything goes any further. Verse 22. "And other money have we brought down in our hands to buy food." We brought more money for the food. "We cannot tell who put our money in our sacks." We have no idea how it got there, but it wasn't us. And he, the steward, said, "Peace be to you, fear not. Your God and the God of your father hath given you treasure in your sacks. I had your money." And he brought Simeon out unto them. So when Joseph did that, when he snuck the money back into the bag, he didn't tell anybody, including the steward of his own house. He never told anybody that he did this. This guy thinks, I got your money, so if there's money in yours, then somehow your God did that for you. It wasn't me. It wasn't that we think you stole it. As far as I know, we have your money. Isn't that cool? Yeah. Verse 24. So he had brought Simeon. Simeon, remember, is the brother that was being held there as collateral for them returning with Benjamin. "And the man brought the men into Joseph's house and gave them water. And they washed their feet, and he gave their asses provender." So he's treating them as honored guests. He's having a servant wash their feet, which is what you would do with a guest. Now they're starting to feel better. If he was going to just throw us in jail here, this is not the way we'd be treated. Verse 25. "And they made ready the present against Joseph came at noon. For they heard that they should eat bread there." They hear they're having lunch. "And when Joseph came home, they brought him the present which was in their hand into the house, and bowed themselves to him to the earth. And he asked them of their welfare, and said, Is your father well? The old man of whom ye spake, is he yet alive? Because it's been some time now since the last time he's talked to them. And even though he's, at that point had heard that Jacob was doing well, he's asking him again, is your father okay? The guy you were telling me about? And they answered, verse 28, thy servant, our father, is in good health. He is yet alive. And they bowed down their heads and made obeisance. Here they are again, now bowing before Joseph, making obeisance unto him. And he lifted up his eyes, Joseph did, and he saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son, and said, is this your younger brother of whom ye spake unto me? He hasn't seen Benjamin now in 13 years, right? He was 17 when he got there. He's 30 now, 31, 32, however far. No, he's got to be, he was 30, he's got to be over 37. He's got to be over 37. So it's more than 13, it's 20 plus years now since he's seen Benjamin, who was just a kid last time he saw him. So when he asks, is this your brother that you were talking about? This one he can't just recognize on sight probably. And he said, God be gracious. And he said, God be gracious unto thee, my son. And Joseph made haste, for his bowels did yearn compassion within him upon his brother. And he sought where to weep, and he entered into his chamber and wept there. He has to run out of the room when he sees and knows that is Benjamin, because he's just so overcome with emotion. He's so overcome with emotion to see Benjamin, who he loved, Benjamin, who he had not seen, that he's got to run up to his room and go cry there before he comes back, because he doesn't want them to see that. He doesn't want them to know yet who he is. And he washed his face, verse 31, and went out and refrained himself. He washes his face so he doesn't look like he's just been crying, and he composes himself before he goes back out there. And said, set on bread. Okay, let's have lunch. And they set on for him by himself, and for them by they themselves, and for the Egyptians which did eat with them by themselves, because the Egyptians might not eat bread with the Hebrews, for that is an abomination unto the Egyptians. It's okay to have this guy run the country under Pharaoh, but we're not going to eat with these guys. And so he's got the Egyptians at one table, his brothers at another table, and he's eating by himself. And they set before him the firstborn according to his birthright, and the youngest according to his youth, and the men marveled one at another. So they've got everybody, with place settings. Everybody's got assigned seating. And they're all seated in places of honor according to their birthright. And his brothers marvel at this, because how does he know who's the oldest, the next in line, the next? There's, 11 of us. How does he know the proper order of this? But he's got it down from the oldest all the way down in line to the youngest. And he took, verse 34, and sent messes unto them from before him. But Benjamin's mess was 5 times so much as any of theirs. That doesn't mean Benjamin was 5 times messier than the rest of them. It means he got, 5 times more food than anybody else. And they drank and were merry with them. So they're just having a grand old time. Great party. Chapter 44. And he commanded the steward of his house, saying, fill the men's sack with food as much as they can carry, and put every man's money in his sack's mouth. Give them their money back. All the money they brought. The money from the first time, the money from this time. Fill their sacks, give them all their money. And put my cup, the silver cup, in the sack's mouth of the youngest, and his corn money. And he did according to the word which Joseph had spoken. As soon as the morning was light, the men were sent away, they and their asses. And when they were gone out of the city, and not yet far off, Joseph said unto the steward, Up, follow after the men. And when thou dost overtake them, say unto them, Wherefore have you rewarded evil for good? Go catch up with them. And when you catch them, say, Hey, what did you do here? We treated you so nice, and you stole not just anything, but the very cup of Joseph. Verse 5, is not this it in which my Lord drinketh, and whereby indeed he divineth? And ye have done evil in so doing. And he overtook them, and he spake unto them these same words. So the guy catches up and says, Why'd you steal Joseph's stuff? This is a really special thing. And they said unto him, verse 7, Wherefore saith my Lord these words? Why are you saying this to us? God forbid that thy servants should do anything according to this thing. God forbid that we do anything like that. We'd never do something like that. Why are you accusing us wrongly? Behold, the money which we found in our sack's mouth we brought again unto thee out of the land of Canaan. How then should we steal out of the Lord's house silver or gold? We're honest guys. We brought back this money. Why would we do this? Why would we steal money when we brought money back? With whomsoever of thy servant it be found, both let him die, and we also will be my Lord's bondmen. You search our stuff. They are so confident that they didn't do this. They say, search our stuff, and if you find it, then whoever's got it, you kill him, and the rest of us will be your servants. Verse 10, and he said, Now also let it be according unto your words. He with whom it is found shall be my servant, and ye shall be blameless. Well, we'll do something like that, but we're not going to kill anybody here. But whoever has it, that guy's going to be our servant. The rest of you can go free. Verse 11, Then they speedily took down every man his sack to the ground, and opened every man his sack. These guys think we got nothing to hide. And he searched and began at the eldest, and left off at the youngest, and the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. Wow. Because that's where Joseph had it put. Then they rent their clothes and laid every man his ass and returned to the city. They rent their clothes, they're in despair, they're all upset, and they go back with him to the city. And Judah and his brethren came to Joseph's house, for he was yet there. And they fell before him on the ground, showing respect. And Joseph said unto them, What deed is this that ye have done? What? Know ye not that such a man as I can certainly divine? Don't you know that if I'm the fella that God showed about this whole famine and all that stuff, that you're not going to, pull something off on me? You're not going to pull the wool over my eyes? Verse 16. And Judah, and notice it's Judah here. And remember, Judah made a promise to his father, and that's what he's going to tell him. And Judah said, What shall we speak unto my Lord? What shall we speak? Or how shall we clear ourselves? How can we convince you that this didn't happen, that we didn't steal this stuff? God hath found out the iniquity of thy servants. Behold, we are my Lord's servants, both we and he also with whom the cup is found. Now, is Judah saying that God's found our iniquity because they did steal their money back? Because he's admitting? No. Because when he's saying God hath found the iniquity, he's, in his mind, referring back to them having long, long ago sold Joseph into slavery. Not that they've connected those dots yet, but they think this is everything bad that's happened to us goes back to that event. We should have never done that. And here, you're going to see Judah and his brethren having gotten to the point where they really have recognized that they've done a terrible thing, that they honestly are sorry. Verse 17. And he said, God forbid that I should do so, Joseph saying. But the man in whose hand the cup is found, he shall be my servant. And as for you, get up in peace unto your father. The rest of you can go. I'm just going to keep the youngest. The rest of you can go. You know what? If these brothers, if these boys had been the same men that had, out of envy, sold Joseph into slavery, they would have said, okay, well, we'll take you up on that deal. You keep Benjamin. We're happy to get off scot-free. We'll leave. Verse 18. Then Judah came near unto him and said, O my Lord, let thy servant, I pray thee, speak a word in my Lord's ears, and let not thy anger burn against my servant, for thou art even as Pharaoh. We know how important you are, and please let me just tell you something here. My Lord asked his servants, saying, Have ye a father or a brother? And we said unto my Lord, We have a father, an old man, a child of old age, a little one. And his brother is dead, and he alone is left of his mother, and his father loveth him. And thou said unto thy servants, Bring him down. And they go through the whole story with Joseph, rehearsing the things that transpired, of how they had told him about this. And Joseph said, You have to bring Benjamin back. And when they went home, they told this to their father, and he didn't want to let Benjamin go, and how much he loved Benjamin, and how he didn't want to lose him no matter what. Look at verse 27. And thy servant my father said unto us, Ye know that my wife bare me 2 sons, and the one went out from me, and I said, Surely he is torn in pieces, and I saw him not since. And if ye take this also from me, and mischief befall him, ye shall bring down my gray hairs with sorrow to the grave. Verse 30. Now therefore, when I come to thy servant my father, and the lad be not with us, seeing that his life is bound up in the lad's life, it shall come to pass, when he seeth that the lad is not with us, that he will die. And thy servants will bring down the gray hairs of thy servant our father with sorrow to the grave. For thy servant became surety for the lad unto thy father, saying, he's saying, thy servant became surety, talking about himself. Judah's saying, I offered myself as collateral. I told my father that if anything was going to happen to Benjamin, I would put myself in his place. And now that's exactly what he's doing. That's exactly the deal he's trying to make here. For thy servant became surety for the lad unto my father, saying, If I bring him not unto thee, then I shall bear the blame to my father forever. Now therefore I pray thee, let thy servant abide instead of the lad, a bondman to my Lord, and let the lad go unto his brethren. For how shall I go up to my father, and the lad be not with me, lest peradventure I see the evil that shall come on my father? Now he has gotten to that point where he's not concerned about his own life. All he wants to do is protect his brother and protect his father. 45, verse 1. Then Joseph could not refrain himself before all them that stood by him. This does it for Joseph. He can't hold it in any longer. When he sees that Judah values his brother and his father more than his own life now Joseph reveals himself. And he cried, Cause every man to go out from me, everybody else out of the room. And there stood no man with him, while Joseph made himself known unto his brethren. And he wept aloud, and the Egyptians and the house of Pharaoh heard. They must have thought, what on earth is going on? And Joseph said unto his brethren, I am Joseph. Doth my father yet live? Wow. Can you imagine what those words, what would have hit their heart? Can you imagine the impact of that? And, a mixture of relief, of fear, of all kinds of things. And his brethren could not answer him, for they were troubled at his presence. They can't even answer his question because they're just so freaked out. And Joseph said unto his brethren, come near to me, I pray you. And they came near. And he said, I am Joseph, your brother, whom ye sold into Egypt. Now, what do you think most people would follow that up with? But look what he says. Now therefore be not grieved. Don't feel bad. Don't feel bad. Nor angry with yourselves. You know, it's one thing to be forgiving. It's one thing to say, okay, you know, I'll let you off the hook. You didn't, but man, I think I'd have to rehearse to them just what a wrong they did me. I think I'd have to let them, know just how rotten it was. And I'd tell them all the mean things that happened to me and all the bad stuff. I'd tell them in great detail what they put me through. I'd make them really grovel. I'd make them, feel really bad. But Joseph says, don't feel bad, boys. Don't be mad at yourselves. Wow. For God did send me before you to preserve life. That's Joseph's perspective on this. For these 2 years hath the famine been in the land, and yet there are 5 years in the which there are that neither be earing nor harvest. They're only 2 years into the famine. 5 more years to come. And God sent me before you to preserve you a posterity in the earth. He sent me to make sure that you stayed alive, to make sure that your children and your children's children and your line, that's posterity is referring to, stayed alive. Joseph knows from God that this is what God did to take care of his family, to take care of the Christ line. And to save your lives by a great deliverance. So now it was not you that sent me hither, but God, and he hath made me a father to Pharaoh, and a lord of all his house, and a ruler throughout the land of Egypt. Haste ye, and go up to my father, and say unto him, Thus saith my son Joseph, God hath made me lord of all Egypt. Come down unto me, tarry not. And thou shalt dwell in the land of Goshen, and thou shalt be near unto me, thou and thy children, and thy children's children, and thy flocks, and thy herds, and all that thou hast. And there will I nurse thee, for yet there are 5 years of famine. I'll take care of you guys. You don't have to be worried at all. Lest thou and thy household and all that thou hast came to poverty. And behold, your eyes see in the eyes of my brethren Benjamin, that it is my mouth that speaketh unto you. And ye shall tell my father of all my glory in Egypt, and of all that ye have seen, and ye shall haste and bring down my father hither. And he fell upon his brethren Benjamin's neck and wept, and Benjamin wept upon his neck. Moreover, he kissed all his brethren, and wept upon them. And after all his brethren talked with them. And then it goes on to talk about how all of Egypt hears about it. And now he brings them into the king's house. And there they are taken care of in great style. And God takes care of them, and God tells Jacob, don't be afraid to go. Everything you're hearing is right, and Joseph's right. This is what I'm doing to take care of you. What a great record. What an incredible record of how God did all this. And here now is the complete fulfillment of what God showed Joseph with those 2 dreams back when he was in his father's house. Everything that God showed Joseph came to pass. Joseph didn't know all the details. And sometimes when it comes to the promises of God, we don't always know how God's going to work it out. But if we are like Joseph and just continue to trust, then God will always make a way where there is no way and cause us to triumph. God bless.